Good evening, everyone. My name is Shashwat, and I'm here today to talk about sports, something which I am very passionate about. Sports is one of those things which some people participate in while others don't. How many of you play sports or do regular physical activity? Now, how many of you think you could probably be doing more? Well, among my peers, I too have unfortunately seen many instances of people being less and less involved in sport. What can be done about this? Well, that is the reason I'm here today, to talk about the decrease in physical activity and an example of a solution that can fix this, with a touch of rural development. Well, first of all, yes, it is happening. Whether you realize it or not, the number of people in the world, especially in younger generations, doing physical activity is declining. There is evidence to support this on a larger scale. According to Forbes, a study conducted by the Sports and Fitness Industry Association found that in the United States, inactivity moved close to 20% among children in 2014. In 2015, however, the same statistic nearly doubled to 37.1%. The study also found that the average number of team sports played by an individual within that age group fell by a total of 5.9% over just 5 years. So we can see quite clearly that it is happening, and that too rather quickly. But these aren't empty claims, as the implications of this make the consequences ones of huge concern. One of the most devastating of these consequences is the impact inactivity can have on people's health. The current decreases in participation are contributing to dangerous obesity trends. The Harvard TEDxCanadian School of Public Health says that the worldwide rate of obesity has nearly doubled since 1980. There are 200 million adult men and 300 million adult women who are obese. The rate of obese teens has also more than quadrupled from 5 to 20.5%. This means that more than 1 in 5 teens is extremely overweight. And to put that in perspective, for a full auditorium, it would mean that about as many people as are here today would be obese. This just goes on to show that the problems being created are becoming more and more serious at a threateningly quick rate. Obesity and similar conditions, of course, are huge issues of their own and can create numerous complications for a person's body and severely worsen their health. One of the main causes for this obesity, of course, is inactivity. There is one way in which an upward trend may already be paving the way for a solution. Memberships to gyms and similar fitness groups have been increasing lately, and this trend is indeed a new one. Most of the adults in the audience would agree that how many of you really remember for it being common for you and your peers to go hit the gym when you were in the teens? Well, people these days are beginning to do this more, and a part of that may be attributed to social media and the rise of fitness accounts and influencers. But gyms, in their current form at least, are most prominent in the developed world, in general, in urban communities, where there is the wealth and infrastructure for this. But when the implications of inactivity themselves are considered, studies actually show that it is rapidly developing countries, not developed ones, that are at the greatest risk of rising obesity, because as people in these countries earn more, they transition to more they transition from traditional diets to diets where they consume more processed foods and more meat. And therefore, it is clear that there is the most need, in fact, here in the developing countries, to promote balanced lifestyles and physical activity. One cause of this inactivity problem, especially among youth, may be the lack of variety of types of physical activity available to do. For example, Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, describes a phenomenon common among ice hockey players in Canada. In Canada, as Gladwell writes, the differentiation between young ice hockey players happens indeed at a very young age, whereby when a child is seen as having superior talent to their peers, they are sent for higher levels of training, where their skills grow to a higher level, and they receive even superior training, where their skills continue to grow even more. And this cycle, termed the Matthew effect, continues. But what happens to those who don't make it? Now, in developed countries like those in North America, this may not be as big of a contributor to inactivity because there is the awareness of other avenues for physical activity, which could be other sports or even public and school facilities for leisurely physical engagement. But imagine a similar situation in a small rural community in a developing nation. If everyone's concentration is dedicated towards one or maybe two of the most popular sports, and every youth vies for opportunities within that sport or two, it is, first of all, definite that not all of them will have the opportunity to pursue the sport at higher levels. And in fact, very, very few of them, if any at all, will do so. But second, and this is where the problem comes in, if only some are deemed skillful enough to receive training within that sport, the rest are left with virtually no opportunity to engage in physical activity. Because there is often not even the awareness of other avenues for physical engagement, let alone the facility to do so. Besides, youth who simply do not have an interest in the narrow path of opportunity offered at this community when it comes to sports are already out of options. So I would like to talk about another perspective on sports that might not only be able to make sport more accessible and inclusive towards people of varying interests, but also have the possibility of bringing economic development to rural communities. This possibility lies in traditional rural sports being introduced to a wider audience. Take the example of India, where a game known as Kabaddi is a popular traditional sport. Have any of you heard of it or watched it? Well, in the last few decades, unfortunately, the sport has seen somewhat of a decline. Among the urban population, who tend to favor more internationally well-known sports such as football, cricket, or tennis, but also among the newer generations of the rural community, because a lack of recognition for the sport has simply led to there being less interest in the sport being pursued at higher levels. This was all until a few years ago, when the Pro Kabaddi League was established, and where bringing the sport to this wider audience completely changed the situation. India's most popular sport is, and for a while has been, cricket. And so when India's top domestic cricket league, the Indian Premier League, or IPL, was established in 2008, it was a tremendous success. In the following years, various internationally well-known sports such as football and badminton attempted to form their own domestic leagues with similar business models, and they were successful to varying extents, but none nearly as much as cricket. However, in 2014, as the result of the hard work, vision, and coming together of a few industrialists and sports personalities, the Pro Kabaddi League held its inaugural season. Many people seemed apprehensive of whether the league would see any success at all, especially given the sport's roots in rural tradition. Surprisingly, however, this turned out to be an advantage to the league, as it meant that it had a wide viewership base. Most incredibly, though, the league succeeded in extending this existing audience to even urban fan bases by modifying some rules to make scoring more accelerated, but also likening some aspects of this league to other professional sports leagues in order to make the league appear more fashionable, and also its players to appear more relatable to its urban audience. All of this while duly maintaining the essence of what is a centuries-old tradition of athleticism. The very first season of the Pro Kabaddi League was watched by 435 million viewers. And the final match of the tournament alone saw a viewership of 86.4 million people. The point is that bringing this rural sport to a wider audience meant that people who were previously only amateur village players had national and even international recognition for what is undoubtedly amazing athletic ability. Needless to say, this brought about considerable prosperity to the communities that produced these players, and also extended much needed investment in sports infrastructure within rural communities. Kabaddi's only previous major platform had been the Asian Games, and even there, it had been dominated by a select few countries such as India and Iran, where the sport had roots in local tradition. But Kabaddi is now growing new roots around the world in places such as Thailand, South Korea, and Kenya, where it is becoming increasingly popular. The 2016 Kabaddi World Cup was a huge success. And being one of my first times actively following Kabaddi, I myself found out about it through an American friend of mine. The solution that this example has provided is that introducing something new like this can definitely be a source of renewed interest in sports from young people possibly wanting a change from the often overly competitive nature of existing well-known sports. Of course, it is simply not practically applicable for every sport possible to establish professional sports leagues and end up being successful. But there are several national and international sporting events such as the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics, which are continuously looking to expand their scope in their diversity of sports based on popularity. And moves like these can all the more add to the diversity of sports and avenues for physical activity that people will have awareness of. And of course, even these are large-scale events, and it may not be the easiest method of including more and more sports to promote among people. But the most important takeaway here is that whether it is business investors, intergovernmental Olympic committees, national and even local sports councils, a huge key to reducing the problem of physical inactivity lies in diversifying the avenues that are present for physical engagement, so as to make it more accessible and inclusive to diverse youth of equally diverse interests. And because they can often draw more interest and curiosity as they are less well known to begin with, rural traditional sports might just be the place to begin. Thank you.